Hey everybody, it's your girl Bunny. To all of my returning subscribers, hey, how you doing? And for those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. Kick your feet up, subscribe to this family-friendly channel, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss any posts. Also follow me on Instagram at the same profile name so you don't miss the sneak peeks of what's coming up next. In this video, it's Queen Sugar, Season 5, Episode 6, entitled May 27th, 2020. I give a recap of the entire episode with photos offset to the side, and then I give my review at the end. No need to dig around. I have all of the minute marks in the comments. It's all coming up next. Ralph, Angel, and Darla are off to a wonderful weekend of newlywed bliss. They share some kisses. Ralph Angel makes some jokes about carrying her and like, oh, I'm gonna drop you. So they're just in bliss, getting ready to go on their honeymoon, sharing that wonderful newlywed time. Charlie and Micah awaken to terrible news of the George Floyd murder video. Micah watches the recap on the news and is quickly traumatized. Again, triggered, having suffered police brutality himself. He's having a panic attack, he's breathing heavily, and it even breaks him down to tears. He's having flashbacks of his occurrences, all of the abuse that he suffered by a police officer. Charlie then tries her best to comfort her son in his time of need, and she's crying because she can only imagine the pain that her son is going through. Vi also views the news report of George Floyd's murder, and Parrish enters the room. Prosper is trying his best to ignore what's going on television by reading the newspaper and just letting Vi speak and not responding. Vi is saying over and over again, this is ridiculous. How can they let that happen? Since Prosper isn't having an engaging conversation with her, she leaves the room to get Hollywood's point of view. But when she goes into the room where Hollywood is, he's watching the newscast and he is emotionally distraught. Nova tries her hardest to meditate and clear negative energy after hearing and seeing such terrible news. And then she decides to make a video honoring the ancestors taken too soon. She gets herself in front of her laptop, prepares her lighting, and she says, calling out to the names to honor: Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown Jr., Sandra Bland, Eric Gardner, Latasha McKenna, Tamia Rice, Philando Castile, Alton Sterling, Betty Jones, Indian Kager, Freddie Glade Jr., Jordan Dars, Dominique Fels, Ryan Milton, Walter Lamar Scott, Antoine Rose II, Tatiana Jefferson, Michelle Couso, Elijah McCain, Daniel McBride, Ahmad McBurry, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. After reading all of the names, it brings Nova to a very painful, gut-wrenching cry. Charlie takes a moment to speak with Micah. Charlie says, please talk to me. Don't shut down. Don't press it down and ignore it. I tried it and it doesn't work. Micah says, this was in broad daylight. It wasn't at night in a dark alley away from everyone else with a gun pointing down their throat. This was in broad daylight. People were across the street begging him to stop, but the cop didn't listen. It's just obvious that no one cares about Black lives, the value of Black life. Charlie tries to comfort him as best as she can. Calvin wants to check on Nova and wants to know if she's okay. Nova informs him, I could be doing a lot better, but I gotta do something. I don't want his name to trend and then disappear. Calvin notices a book that she's reading entitled Without Sanctuary, which is a book that documents photos of lynching and white people who were getting ready and as if it were an event and watching. They dressed up in their Sunday's best to watch people be lynched. And Nova says, there were cops that were watching another cop kill a man, and they let it happen. It's hideous. And Calvin can do nothing but listen. Meanwhile, Ralph Angel and Darla, they are enjoying their time away as newlyweds. And of course, it's a moment for adults only. And they even have some nice role play. And Darla is definitely putting on the cat's meow, honey. As Nova is in her space trying to write and think, Calvin watches an action movie with a lot of gunshot noises and explosions, triggering Nova to stand up. She walks into the room asking Calvin, "Do you feel ashamed about what happened to George Floyd? I mean, when black people learn that other black people have done something wrong, we can feel it. There's this sense of shame. We all say, well, I hope it's nobody black. Oh, that person that got shot, I hope it's nobody that did it that's black. I mean, I just don't understand. Do you feel ashamed?" And Calvin says, "Am I speaking for all white people?" Nova says, "No, I just want you to speak for yourself. It's a simple question. When you saw what happened to George Floyd, how did you feel?" I'll use what you're saying from our article. And Calvin says, I felt disgusted watching a human life be taken. I mean, I'm not embarrassed because I had nothing to do with it. And Nova says, you know what? If it were a black cop who killed him, I would personally feel embarrassed. Calvin's daughter then enters the room and sits down and asks, well, why would you feel embarrassed? You didn't do it. And Nova says, every black person's action is seen as a collective endeavor. Every action besides success, which is crazy in the eyes of America. There's this crazy imbecile in the White House, and all the things that he does are just shrugged off. If Obama would do some of the things that he did, black people would shake their heads. And Calvin says, so all black Americans are sad because of this mess that he was involved in? And Nova says, you know what? It's the mess that the white man in the Oval Office is involved in as well. You aren't connected with him. And it's a very low-key, painful debate that leaves thick tension in the room. Micah takes a moment to work out while he's talking to a friend on the phone about the current event. He turns on the news and he sees protesters burning buildings. And he's saying to the screen, they deserve that. Burn that ish down. Charlie walks into the room and hears him saying those things. And Charlie is upset that Micah would say that. He tells his friend, you know what, let me call you back. Charlie says, to say something like that, I don't agree with that. Someone could get hurt. Someone could die from all of that. And Micah says, what, fight with love, Mom? And Charlie says, don't do that because you're angry. Don't turn into what's wrong. Love isn't a weakness. I mean, you can't lead without love. Like Martin Luther King said, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light. You know that. And Micah said, King also says that a riot is the language of the unheard. You're talking about protesting a system that's meant to destroy us. What, we're supposed to turn the other cheek with a gun in our mouth or a knee on our neck? Charlie says, look, I got word that the council, they know it's a protest tonight at City Hall, and there's a concern about violence, and there will be police there. Are you going to the protest? And Micah says, Mom, I helped plan that protest. And he walks out of the room. Darla and Ralph Angel get back from a good swim, and they're talking about how the swim was wonderful and they're having a wonderful time. As they settle in, Ralph gets a call from Hollywood, and he seems very antsy. And Hollywood says, man, have you heard? I don't mean to disturb you, but have you seen everything that's going on? The TV? And Ralph Angel's just like, no, what's going on? He's like, just turn on any channel. It's on every channel. And Ralph Angel was looking at it in disbelief. Like, wow. He just sat there with his knee on his neck. Hollywood says, I didn't mean to call you and disturb you, but I didn't mean to bother you, brother. I'm just so angry and I don't know what to do. Ralph Angel said, it's okay, man. It's all right. We'll talk about it when I get back. He hangs up with Hollywood and Ralph watches the news coverage and it brings him to painful, heartbroken tears. Vi, Prosper, and Hollywood prep the restaurant just in case protesters cause damage. Vi says, I don't think anybody would hurt this restaurant. I mean, everybody around here knows how important this place is. Prosper and Vi thinks that it's unnecessary, but Vi says, I have to agree with you. I mean, we got to take precautions. While Vi and Prosper have small talk, Vi keeps telling Hollywood, okay, look, now you're putting the board up, but don't mess up my borders and my molding. You know what? I don't even think we need to just use the rest of this board. Why don't we just take it over to the rental spot and we can use the wood for that? And Hollywood says, you know what? I don't even care about that spot anymore. I'm over it. You know what? I don't even care. And Vi is confused as, why would you say a thing like that? Hollywood's just like, no, baby, just, can you give me the nails and the hammer so I can finish this? And as she goes to the toolbox, it's like he has an epiphany. And Hollywood says, no, baby, wait, I need to just... And she finds a weapon in his toolbox. Prosper takes a moment and he wants to give them privacy and steps out of the room. Vi is shocked and saying, you promised me you would never have one of these. And each day you've had this, you were lying to me. Why? Hollywood says, why? Do you see what's going on? Do you see what they did to that man? You know what? All this time they're talking about how this man died. And no one has ever asked him about everything that was going on when he lived. If he had a family, a wife, a child. No one's asking those questions. And I feel some type of way about that. I mean, if somebody, one of you, Prosper, somebody would try to hurt you, I need to feel like I can protect you. Vi doesn't want him to have it, but after he expresses his urgent desire to feel like he can protect them, she nods her head and says, well, I can understand why you would believe that. Nova thanks Courtney for making an awesome dinner, but says that she'll only take a few bites because she doesn't want to be late. Calvin shows concern and says, well, why don't you just stay at home? But Nova ignores him as she continues watching the footage of the protests on TV. Courtney asks Nova how the article is going, and Nova says, slowly but surely it's going okay. It's about people who just stand by and watch. So-called bystanders. Actually, Calvin, I was hoping you would tell me about the time you watched. You admitted that you watched some of your fellow officers beat up a black boy once when you first became a cop. Courtney is shocked to hear this about her dad, and she says, Dad, you what? And Calvin says, it was 20 years ago. I was a rookie trying to fit in. This kid got caught stealing a candy bar. It was stupid. It was a waste of our time. We didn't even need to go. But my partner then called for some more cops. I didn't know what to do, and I kept asking, why? Why are you taking this so far? And his reasoning was that it was a down payment. And Nova says, well, what is a down payment? And he said, it's cop talk. It's for beating up a black kid when they're young, so they would know what to expect when they got older. I should have done more. I should have been stronger, better. It's one of the worst experiences of my life. And Nova says, I'm sure it wasn't the best day for the kid either. Micah gets ready to head out for the protest and says, hey, Mom, I'm going to make sure to stay safe while I'm out there. Charlie starts to say something. He says, but Mom, I made up my mind about this and I'm going, okay? So just please don't try to stop me or talk me out of it. And she says, no, wait. What I was trying to ask was, do you have another one of those? And she points to his shirt. And he says, yeah. Yeah. And he runs up the steps to go get Charlie a shirt. Ralph, Angel, and Darla talk about how they're going to discuss this George Floyd matter to Blue. And Darla says, they need to stop playing the loop because it's traumatic, especially to young black boys. It's just like making it okay for them to see it over and over again. Ralph says, we don't have to cut our vacation short. I mean, we only have 2 more days. It's our last moments of some sort of peace. And I feel like it's just death all around us. I mean, you got those people who have these vacations and stuff all the time. And they take care of themselves and enjoy everything. This is our opportunity to just enjoy our break. And when we get back, we'll be in that same world, the same old thing over and over again. Darla says, you know what? I completely understand what you're saying. And I agree with your argument. And she looks at him with tears in her eyes. But she says, Ralph, as a mother, I just want to go back home and hold my son. I just need to be there and hug him and let him know that everything will be okay. Ralph says, all right, I can understand that. While heading on the way back home, they stop for gas, and Darla says to Ralph, and I couldn't find the other snacks that you wanted, but I did find this one. And a white man cuts her off mid-conversation and says, Black Moms Matter, referring to what's on Darla's t-shirt. And he says, well, what about my mom? It'd be good when all my moms matter, right? Ralph tries to ignore him and says, so anyway, Darla, what kind of snacks you got for me, baby? And he keeps going. Well, how would you feel if I had a sign like that on my car that said White Lives Matter? And Darla says, well, I would say it was redundant. And the white guy says, I see you got one of those mouthy ones, huh? Ralph Angel says, watch your mouth. And you don't want this smoke, so just pump your gas and leave us alone, okay? But the guy continues, so we're just going to burn the whole city down because some guy resisted arrest? I mean, he got what he deserved, and that's a fact. Ralph Angel says, you know what else is a fact? You and your kind? Y'all are in y'all's last days. Darla tries to hold him back and tell him to stop, but Ralph says, no. Look, man, that gas that you just got, get it and just keep pushing if you know what's good for you. The guy turns around to get into his vehicle without saying a word, and Ralph says, now go on now with your punk ass. Later at the protest, we see Nova, and then over a span, we see Courtney and Calvin also. And it's a new energy, and you could see it in their faces. They're understanding why they must be there. Micah sees his mother from across the way, and he's seeing his mother in a totally different light. They connect eyes, and they start to chant together from afar. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. And Micah can't help but to get more energy seeing his mother being supportive. Vi and Hollywood share some pillow talk. And Hollywood says, some way, somehow, I gotta let my brother know we're here. I mean, when he called out to his mother, think about it. She was the only thing he thought in that moment that could protect him. Do you know what it's like to be a black man in America? And the only thing you feel that can protect you is your mother? And she's passed on. In his last moments, did he see her? And Hollywood breaks down in tears. Blue and Darla arrive back at home, and Darla takes a moment to speak with Blue. And Blue's excited, asking, "Did you have fun at your honeymoon?" She says, "Yes, we had lots of fun. We danced, we swam, and we just celebrated being married." And Blue says, "Well, if it was so fun, why'd you come back so early?" Darla says, "Well, I missed you." And Ralph comes in the room and says, "Yeah, we wanted to be here with you and just be together at home." And Blue says, "Are you talking about what happened to Mr. Floyd?" Darla says, "Did you see anything on the news?" And Blue expresses that he heard people saying Black Lives Matter a lot on TV, and that they said something happened to him and then he died. Darla tries to explain and says he was a man who but Ralph Angel said he got killed by some police officers. Black Lives Matter, you know what that means? It says, "Yes, but don't all lives matter?" It says, "Yeah, but everyone don't act like it. So we can't say all lives matter until Black Lives Matter does." He continues, and Darla tries to stop him, but Ralph says, "No, Darla, it's time." Ralph continues and says, "This world, unfortunately, isn't a good place all the way around. There's a lot of bad out there. I wished I lived in a world where everything was good. I wish that every person you meet in your life would be good and that I could protect you from everything that's bad." Darla also says, "And you have to be extra careful with the police." And Blue says, "Well, I won't break the law." And Ralph says, "No, son, it's more than that. Police will stop you because you're Black. That's the experiences of Black boys and Black men in America, just because you're Black." Blue says, "Well, that's not right. Can't we change it? Vi is always talking about being the person that makes the change, right?" Ralph says, "You can help change by staying alive and doing special things in your life." Blue says, "Well, how do I stay alive?" Which brings Darla and Ralph to tears. Ralph says, "When they stop you, don't run. They'll shoot you in the back. And 2, if something's wrong, something's going on, you call me and your mama first, okay?" And it's a very heart-wrenching scene. Ralph says, "You're a smart kid. You'll be fine in this world." And they all share a hug, crying. And that is the end of the episode. Another amazing, well-written, well-directed episode. Absolutely wonderful. So many key points were brought up in this episode that they can actually be broken down into classes. Literally classes that somebody could take about socioeconomics, about racism, about documentaries, about experiences, being biracial, being in biracial relationships. The dynamic of the biracial relationship of Nova and Calvin is showing the deeper sides of not just loving each other, but understanding both sides, understanding each person's experience. Calvin was really, really patient and really trying to understand where Nova was coming from, which is very important to learning and growing as a people, right? Because if he had just been an individual that says, "Well, it has nothing to do with me, I don't understand it, I don't want to talk about it," that is not being a good involved party in a relationship. He did recognize that when she said certain things, that white people this and white people that, he knew that she wasn't lashing out about him specifically, but she was talking through her experience. And that's a learning experience as well for Nova. because she realized that, oh, I shouldn't have said that, not you. I just meant, with what's going on. So she's expressing that I said that out of anger and frustration, but I know you specifically aren't the person who did about what I'm upset about. And also talking about things that can make you frustrated and having that platform to feel safe in order to talk about it. Learning about which something he mentioned a couple of seasons back, how Nova wasn't in the capacity to talk about it at the time, when Calvin did express to her that he did witness his officer counterparts beating up a young black boy. But now it's resurfaced again with this current event of the murder of George Floyd. Transfer of anger is something to really talk about. That could be talked about in a psychology course, in learning that in order to understand and love each other, you have to learn everything culturally, experiences, even if it has nothing to do with you. If you love that person, you understand that comes with their experiences in their life. So I thought that was amazing writing. Very painful. I'm having the talk with children who are black about this American experience, because honestly, you have to be honest, we do all not share the same American experience. It was just very heartbreaking to see the photo of the face-to-face of one generation of a father telling this to his son about being black and how that's going to affect everything. We saw that dismissiveness from Prosper in this episode when Vi tried to speak to him about the situation. Because if you think about his age, if you think about Prosper's age, he's seen this his entire life. He's seen that racism. He's seen the police brutality. He's seen so much in his lifetime. He was already dealing with the depression of the pandemic. Now to have that to happen, he just didn't have the capacity to talk about it. His only response was, well, racism isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Like, they're going to do what they're doing. He just didn't have the capacity. Him not wanting to hear it and him trying to read the paper was his way of just, I can't, which is how a lot of us felt. Some people wanted to go out and protest and be a part of expressing how this is wrong and how this is not something that we must continue to deal with. But a lot of people emotionally just did not have the capacity. It was something that was very traumatic. It was very, very triggering for me to see this episode, because it was something that I had to revisit in emotions. Bringing up in the writing what Darla's line is saying, that they keep looping it. They keep showing it over and over again, not thinking about how this is traumatizing a lot of people. Seeing death isn't natural, and it shouldn't be to the point where it's played over and over again to where people of color are desensitized, which a lot of us are from seeing the same thing. And that is something that doesn't need to be desensitized. This needs to be something that is horrific. Like Nova said, this is not something that we should be seeing. And what they did with the writing is they talked about that book that made it so normal, that made it so okay that they had lynchings as public events. This is not long ago, people. This is within my mother's lifetime. And my mother, thank the Lord, is still with us. This is not something that was 4,000 years ago, okay? This is in not any more than 30 or 40 years ago, okay, you guys? And a lot of those people who did those lynchings are still alive and well. Those people that made it okay, those people that made those laws, all of that, those people are still with us. And they have their descendants, and that stuff is, the roots of that is so deep when it comes to the history of America. And if you don't see that that is how everything was created and developed for America, you have a lot of reflecting, a lot of research, and a lot of things you need to learn. Mental health, the trauma, the traumatic things, over and over again. We talked about that. Also, the scene in Darla saying that we've got to cut this vacation short. And I understood both sides. I understood Ralph saying that this is something that we can deal with when we get home. We don't get a vacation that often. We just need to enjoy these 2 days. We can talk to Blue another time. We can deal with this when we get there. I get his side, because you're like, wow, can we just enjoy this moment? Because it seemed so blissful before Hollywood called, which I thought was kind of rude of Hollywood. I wish that he hadn't called Blue, because they were just in their happiness bubble for a while. And I'm pretty sure that Ralph would have found out about it when they left and they went home. But Hollywood was so traumatized and so sad. He didn't know who else to talk to, or he didn't know who else to call. So he called Ralph. But Darla, from a mother's perspective, she says, I understand that. I totally agree with what you're saying. But I have to be near my son, and I have to hold my son. And I'm not a mother, and I can only imagine that gut feeling of I would give up 2 vacation days and all of this blissfulness just to be near my son. The number one takeaway that, if I were the writer, would want something to take away from this, is that this is for those who are not people of color. The number one thing is being silent is just as guilty. How they wrote that into the script and showing Calvin talk about his experience and him being silent made him just as guilty as if he physically beat the boy up instead of not standing up for what's right. But then to see him listen to it, receive it, and understand it, and then take action into being present at the protest was a reflection of what happened in a lot of the protests. That it being peaceful and not letting the name just be something that's trending for a certain period of time. That this is something that all people of America need to understand why this is not right. So I really like how they showed that dynamic, that it's meant to be positive and not rioting. A lot of the people who burn things, riot, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, that is the language, right, of individuals who are pretty much the layman's terminology, sick and tired of being sick and tired. Charlie was making an argument that we can vote, that we can do this, and Mike was just like, "Now that ain't it." That's not all we can do. Like that has to stop. So I really like how they showed that dynamic in this episode, and also I want people to understand that the organization itself of Black Lives Matter, it should be set aside of what the movement and what it means, right? For those of you who still aren't understanding that when you say Black Lives Matter, which they show in this episode as well, the white guy was asking Darla and Ralph, like, how would you feel if I put this on my car? How would you feel I put that on my car? And then Blue asking, well, don't all lives matter? And Ralph saying that until the actions show otherwise, we have to say that Black Lives Matter. We have to help people remember that our lives matter just like everybody else. When you say save the whales, that doesn't mean forget the other fish. What it does is it's bringing awareness to a particular group that something's not right, that something's happening. So let me know what you thought about this episode. Each episode this season can literally be taught in classes, literally. Everything from economics to work to schooling to communication to understanding how America has desensitized a lot of the things and making them okay that are not okay. This country was built on racism, and we can't keep ignoring facts, because if we do that, history will unfortunately repeat itself. That's not what we need. Also, it was triggering and traumatizing for me as well, saying all of those names in that scene when Nova was making that video. In my mind, it was just too many names. It was too many names. One is too many, but every name that she mentioned brought me back to how they were murdered and how there were no consequences to the people who murdered them. And each name she read, I felt each one like, it was just like, just bringing me back to each incident. Let me know what you thought. Make sure that you comment below, like this video. Please subscribe and share this channel with family and friends. Make sure to check out so many things that are in the playlist that you can binge watch that you can share with people. And knowing that this is family friendly, knowing that there's not any profanity or anything like that. So feel free to share. In the meantime, take care of yourself and each other. Stay on the lookout for Delilah, which is the new show on OWN and Discovery Network. Until then, take care of yourself and each other. Until next time, bye.